location. A dimly lit alleyway in downtown Philadelphia, where shadows hide secrets and danger lurks in the corners. A heroic rescue takes a chilling turn when a little girl's words reveal an even bigger nightmare. Where are you watching from, and what time is it? Jaden Walker never expected that his late-night shortcut home would change everything. At just 12 years old, he knew the streets well. He had grown up navigating them, learning which corners to avoid, which alleys to ignore. But that night, something was different. The air felt colder. The silence felt heavier. As he walked past a dark alley, a sound stopped him in his tracks. Muffled sobs. His instincts told him to run, to keep walking and pretend he had not heard anything. But something inside him, something stronger than fear, made him stop. Slowly, cautiously, he peered into the darkness. That was when he saw her. A little girl, no older than 6, curled up against the brick wall. Her arms were tied, her face streaked with tears, her wide eyes filled with terror. Jaden's breath caught in his throat. His pulse pounded in his ears. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around, to run and get help. But there was no time for that. Before he could think, he rushed forward. "It's okay," he whispered, kneeling beside her. His fingers worked quickly, untying the ropes around her wrists. "I got you." The little girl trembled, her small hands gripping his sleeve. Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something but could not find the words. Then finally, she spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but the 4 words sent a chill down Jaden's spine. "Help! They got my brother!" His hands froze for just a second, the weight of her words sinking in. His eyes darted around the alley, searching for any sign of movement. Whoever had taken her brother could still be close. Jaden swallowed hard, his mind racing. He wanted to tell her everything would be okay, that they would find her brother, but he knew words were not enough. Action was what mattered now. He took a deep breath and pulled her to her feet. "Can you walk?" She nodded weakly, though her legs wobbled beneath her. He steadied her, glancing over his shoulder once more. The alley stretched further into darkness, and an uneasy feeling settled in his stomach. There were too many places someone could hide, too many ways this could go wrong. But he could not leave, not now. "Which way did they go?" he asked, his voice low. She hesitated before pointing deeper into the alley. Jaden clenched his fists. Every part of him wanted to run in the opposite direction and get help. But what if there was no time? What if her brother was still close, still waiting to be saved? His mind warred between fear and determination. He knew the risks, knew that stepping further into the shadows could be dangerous. But he also knew one thing for certain. He could not just walk away. He looked back at the girl, his decision made. "Stay close," he told her. "We're going to find him." What would you do if you were in Jaden's position? "Let's discuss." Jaden frantically untied the little girl, his hands shaking as he worked. His heart pounded against his ribs, the urgency of the moment crashing down on him. He could hear her ragged breathing, see the terror in her eyes. She was no older than 6, her small face streaked with dirt and tears. Her wrists bore red marks where the ropes had been too tight. "Who took your brother?" Jaden whispered, his voice urgent but careful. Her lower lip quivered. "The men," she hiccuped. "They said he's next if I scream." Jaden swallowed hard, his grip tightening around her small hands. His mind raced. Whoever had taken her brother was still nearby. They could come back at any moment. "We have to go, now." His voice was firm, leaving no room for hesitation. She nodded, her tiny fingers latching onto his wrist as he helped her to her feet. He peered out of the alley, scanning the street. It was late, the sidewalks mostly empty, the flickering streetlights casting eerie shadows. If they could just make it to the main road, maybe someone would help them. Just as they stepped forward, a noise behind them sent a jolt of fear through Jaden's spine. Footsteps, slow, purposeful. Then a voice, deep, rough, dripping with menace. "Where do you think you're going?" Jaden's stomach dropped. His fingers instinctively tightened around the girl's hand. He turned his head slightly, just enough to catch a glimpse of a figure emerging from the shadows. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, his silhouette stretching against the dim alley light. Jaden's mind screamed at him to move. The little girl whimpered, pressing closer to his side. He could feel her trembling, her fingers clutching at his sleeve. The man took another step forward, his heavy boots scraping against the pavement. Every instinct told Jaden to run, but his feet felt frozen in place. His breath quickened. He glanced toward the open street, calculating the distance. If he ran now, could they make it? Would the man catch them before they even reached the sidewalk? The little girl tugged at his hand. Jaden! He had to decide. Now his pulse thundered in his ears as he shifted his weight, bracing himself. If he ran, he had to be fast, faster than he had ever been. If he fought, he had to be smart, smarter than the man who loomed over them. The man chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "You really think you can just walk away?" Jaden's muscles tensed. He had no idea what this man was capable of, but he knew one thing. He could not let him take the girl. He would not let another child disappear into the darkness. His grip on her hand tightened as he made his choice. Would you run or fight? "Let's talk." Jaden tightened his grip on the girl's hand. "Come on," he shouted, bolting toward the street. Behind them, heavy boots slammed against the pavement. The men were giving chase. Jaden's breath came in sharp bursts as they wove through the streets, dodging past honking cars and startled pedestrians. His legs burned, but he did not stop. He could not stop. The girl struggled to keep up, her small feet stumbling as they ran, but she did not let go of his hand. "Help! They have my brother!" she screamed, her voice raw with desperation. People turned to stare. Some paused, confused, but no one moved to help. No one wanted to get involved. Jaden's mind raced. He scanned the streets looking for something, anything that could save them. Then he saw it. A police car, parked at a gas station just ahead. "We're almost there," he gasped, pushing himself harder. His legs felt like they would give out, but he could not slow down. Just as they reached the lot, a rough hand grabbed the girl's hoodie and yanked her back. She let out a terrified cry. Jaden reacted instinctively. His eyes darted to a metal trash can beside him. Without thinking, he swung it with all his strength. "Let her go!" The impact sent the man stumbling back. The girl wrenched free, her breath coming in panicked gasps. Jaden grabbed her hand again, and they sprinted toward the officers. The men behind them recovered quickly. Heavy footsteps thundered against the pavement as they surged forward, closing the gap. Jaden could hear their breathing, their determination. They were not about to let the kids escape so easily. The gas station's bright lights flickered overhead as they reached the parking lot. Jaden's chest heaved with each breath, his grip tightening around the girl's trembling fingers. The officers near the squad car turned, their faces shifting from casual to alert in an instant. Jaden didn't stop. He didn't look back. "Help! Please!" he gasped as he reached the first officer. The words tumbled out of him between breaths. "They were chasing us. They took her brother." The girl clung to Jaden, her face buried against his arm. She was shaking, unable to speak. The officers exchanged glances, their eyes scanning the lot. One of them, a tall man with a stern expression, crouched down to meet Jaden's gaze. Breathless, Jaden and the girl reached the officers. She was kidnapped. "And they have her brother," he blurted out, his voice shaking. The officers exchanged glances, their skepticism evident. One of them, a stocky man with graying hair, folded his arms. "Slow down, kid. What are you talking about?" The girl sobbed, her small hands clutching Jaden's sleeve. "They said they'd take us both," she choked out, her voice barely above a whisper. The skepticism vanished. The officers snapped to attention. "Where? Who took him?" the tall officer demanded, already reaching for his radio. Jaden spun around, pointing toward the alley where they had come from. But the men were gone. The once shadowed path now stood empty, only the distant hum of the city breaking the silence. A tense moment passed. The officers scanned the area, their hands hovering near their holsters. Then, the radio crackled to life. "All units. Possible child abduction in progress. Suspects may be armed. Proceed with caution." Jaden felt his heart hammering against his ribs. The weight of the night pressed down on him, exhaustion clawing at his limbs. He glanced at the girl, who still trembled beside him. Her face was pale, her tear-streaked cheeks glistening under the harsh gas station lights. The officer who had spoken first crouched in front of them. "Kid, you need to tell us everything. Start from the beginning. What exactly happened?" Jaden gulped in air, his mind replaying every terrifying moment. "I was walking home, and I heard her crying. She was tied up in the alley, and she said the men took her brother. She said if she screamed, they'd take her too. I untied her, and we ran. They chased us. They almost caught us. But we got here." The officer nodded, processing every word. His gaze flicked toward his partner. "We need to check that alley, now." One officer turned toward his radio again. "Dispatch, we need backup near the gas station on 5th. Send units to search the area. We have a child abduction case unfolding." Jaden and the girl remained silent as the officers moved with urgency. The fear in Jaden's chest did not ease. The men had disappeared too easily. Had they gone into hiding? Were they watching them even now? The tall officer gave them a reassuring nod. "You both are safe now. Stay here. We're going to find him." Jaden wasn't sure he could believe that. The girl's brother was still missing. The men had escaped into the night. And time was slipping away. "Have you ever been ignored when telling the truth?" "Let's discuss." Jaden insisted on going with the police. "I heard a van. They were going east," he said, his voice urgent. The officers hesitated for only a second before one of them nodded. "Get in," he said, opening the back door of the squad car. The girl sat beside Jaden, still shaking. Her small fingers clutched his sleeve as if afraid to let go. "They said my brother was next," she whispered. "Tell us everything you remember," the officer in the front seat said as he turned the key. The engine roared to life, and the sirens blared as they sped off. "A black SUV," the girl said. "Tinted windows, 2 men. One had a scar on his cheek. The other smelled like cigarettes." The officer relayed the information over the radio. "Be advised, we are searching for a black SUV, likely moving east. Suspects are 2 males, possible child inside." Jaden stared out the window as the city lights blurred past them. His hands clenched into fists. He had done everything he could, but it was not over yet. Then, the radio crackled. "Suspect vehicle spotted on EI-95, moving fast." Jaden's breath caught. "Please, find him," he murmured. The police car accelerated, weaving through traffic. Jaden could feel the tension thick in the air. Every second mattered. Every passing moment felt too long, Minutes later, they reached the highway. Red and blue lights flashed ahead. A roadblock had been set up. Officers had their guns drawn, positioned behind their vehicles. The black SUV screeched to a halt, tires smoking against the pavement. "Hands up! Step out of the vehicle!" An officer bellowed through a megaphone. A long, agonizing pause followed. Then the car door flew open. A small boy stumbled out, his face streaked with tears. The girl gasped, "Aiden!" She bolted from the police car, running straight toward her brother. Jaden followed, his heart pounding. One of the officers caught the girl just before she reached the vehicle. "Wait! We need to secure the area." But Aiden broke free, running toward her, his sobs mixing with hers. The officers quickly restrained the two men inside the SUV. One of them cursed under his breath as he was shoved against the hood of a police cruiser. The other glared silently, his jaw clenched. Jaden barely noticed. His eyes were on Aiden and his sister, their small arms wrapped around each other, clinging as if they would never let go. One of the officers approached, placing a reassuring hand on Jaden's shoulder. "You did good, kid. You saved them." Jaden exhaled, his body sagging from exhaustion. He had never wanted to be a hero. He had just wanted to help. Now, looking at Aiden and his sister, he knew he had done the right thing. The nightmare was over. Do you believe in miracles? Let's talk about it. The kidnappers were taken into custody, their hands secured behind their backs as officers led them away. What had started as a terrifying chase had now led to something even bigger, an organized trafficking ring exposed. The officers worked quickly, searching the black SUV and securing evidence that would ensure the men never walked free again. Jaden and the little girl stood side by side, watching, as the officers placed the men into the back of a patrol car. Relief washed over them, but the weight of the night still hung heavy in the air. "They can't hurt anyone else now," Jaden said, his voice barely above a whisper. The girl looked up at him, her eyes still wide with lingering fear. She gave a small nod, gripping her brother's hand tightly. Aiden had stopped crying, but he clung to his sister as if he feared she might disappear again. The scene around them was chaotic. Flashing lights, radios crackling, voices giving orders. Officers moved with urgency, speaking into their radios, documenting the case. The gravity of what had been uncovered was still sinking in. This was not just a single abduction. It was something far worse. Hours later, after statements had been taken, and the children were reunited with their family, the mayor arrived on the scene. News crews gathered, cameras flashing as he stepped forward. He shook hands with the officers, then turned to Jaden. "Because of you, 2 lives were saved," the mayor said, his voice filled with gratitude. Jaden shuffled his feet, unsure how to respond. He had not done this for recognition. He had only done what felt right. The girl's parents, with tears in their eyes, stepped forward. They embraced Jaden, their emotions overwhelming them. "You are our angel," the mother whispered, her voice breaking. "We will never forget what you did." Jaden stood frozen for a moment before nodding. He had never considered himself a hero, but tonight he had made a difference. What do you think Jaden deserves for his bravery? Let's discuss. Jaden, once just a boy walking home, was now a hero. His courage had not only saved the little girl, but had also led to the rescue of her brother. What started as an ordinary night had transformed into a moment that would be remembered forever. The fear, the chase, the desperate escape. It had all built up to something greater than he could have imagined. The city hailed him as an inspiration. News reports covered his bravery, calling him proof that even in darkness, light could shine. People spoke of his selflessness, of his willingness to act when others hesitated. Strangers stopped him on the street, thanking him for his courage. But to Jaden, he had simply done what anyone should do. Despite the recognition, he felt unchanged. The night still replayed in his mind, the fear in the girl's eyes, the way Aiden had clung to his sister, the heavy silence before the kidnappers were taken away. He did not feel like a hero. He had just done what was right. As the commotion settled and the night neared its end, Jaden finally made his way home. The streets were quieter now, the city lights casting a soft glow around him. His heartbeat had slowed, his breathing steady. Everything felt different. Yet somehow, he was still the same boy who had taken a shortcut home. The weight of what had happened stayed with him. He knew that even though the night was over, the impact of his actions would last forever. The little girl and her brother would be safe because of him. Their lives had changed, and in a way, so had his. He had seen what it meant to step up when no one else did. He had felt the fear, the uncertainty, and yet he had not backed down. He walked past the alley where he had first heard the girl's cries. It looked the same, dark, unassuming, just another part of the city. But to him, it would never be just another place again. It was where he had made a choice that had altered the course of lives. It was where he had proven to himself that he could be more than just a boy walking home. The wind was cool against his skin as he turned the final corner toward his house. His mother would be worried. She would ask questions, and for the first time in his life, he would have a story to tell that truly mattered. He had faced something terrifying, something raw, and he had not run from it. He had stepped forward, and because of that, 2 lives had been saved. One thing, however, was certain. Heroes did not always wear capes. Sometimes they were just ordinary people who refused to look away. What's the biggest lesson from Jaden's journey? Let's talk in the comments.